Hi guys, it's Geekonomics here, and today I'm going to bring you the last in the series of feedback sessions for my Year 11 class with regard to their GCSE Economics mock exam. And today I'm going to be looking at Unit 2, a 592 paper that is the macroeconomic paper. And I've got an A-star candidate's piece of work in front of me. So this is one of my students from last year, scored 52 out of 60, and this is the sort of thing that you should be looking for if you want to be scoring that A-star or the A. Obviously, I will be seeing you on an individual basis to give you individual feedback. This is just general feedback with regard to each of the answers. So, without further ado, ladies and gents, let's get cracking. So here we are on question 1. Now there were quite a few data sets for you to interpret, should I say, on this particular paper. So do make sure that you are familiar with data in all of its forms, being presented in various different forms. You'll obviously be asked to interpret it. This one simply asks you to read from the data. Question 1, which says, which quarter shown in figure 1 has the highest GDP growth, has the greatest decrease in GDP, is the last in the longest period of positive economic growth. And so you just read those from the chart. So 1 is 2012 quarter 3, 2 is 2008 quarter 4, and 3 is 2010 quarter 3. Some of you, for some unknown reason, you wrote the year and then didn't give the quarter, or wrote the quarter and didn't give the year. Got to be careful. That's just pure carelessness, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot afford to be dropping marks on these very easy initial questions. These questions are for the candidates who may not be able to score many marks at all in the paper. So if you're a high caliber candidate, you've got to be nailing these questions. Bear in mind, the threshold for A-star is 52 out of 60, so you've only got 8 marks to play with throughout the whole paper. Right, next part of this one, 1B. A recession is defined as a period of at least 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. What evidence is there of recession between 2008 and 2012? Explain your answer using the information in figure 1. That means you must refer to the data in figure 1. So we can see here, for instance, this is 2008, obviously onset of the largest global recession in post-war history. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarters of negative growth, and then running on into 2011 we've got another 1, 2, 3 quarters of negative growth. So that's all you've got to do. Identify those periods in your answer, and that will get you the 3 marks. Simple as. Right, next question. Identify and explain one cost and one benefit of economic growth. Costs and benefits of economic growth. Now, you really ought to know these off pat, these costs and benefits of economic growth. If I just bring up the mark scheme here to show you the types of things that they were looking for. So these were the costs: pollution, congestion, loss of non-renewable resources, inequalities in distribution of income and wealth, demand pull inflation. And then benefits: rising standards of living, a reduction in poverty, more government welfare services, rising employment or falling unemployment. Those are the types of things that you needed to have in your answer. You get 1 for the identification, and because this is a 6-mark question, then it's 1 plus 2 and 1 plus 2. So each of these carries 2 marks for the explanation that follows your identification. So fill the space and fill your boots in terms of your explanation. So this candidate has written, non-renewable resources are lost. As the population increases and the public become richer, the demand for things such as oil increases. As a result, more oil is extracted, in high quantities, and these resources cannot be recreated. The loss of these resources is permanent, and so they go on. But they've enough there for 3 marks on that one. And then the second one, the benefit. There is a reduction in unemployment. As the economy grows, consumer becomes richer, demand for goods and services increases. Firms need to meet this higher demand and so employ more people. Again, tremendous answer, 3 marks. We need read no further. And then we're into D. So now we're into the essay question, the first of the discussion style questions on this particular paper. Explain 2 supply side policies which the government could use to achieve economic growth. Discuss how effective you think each policy might be in achieving growth. First thing is, ladies and gents, you must know the difference between monetary policy, fiscal policy and supply side policy. Remember, monetary is base rate and money supply, fiscal, government spending and taxation, supply side policies, a whole host of policies. So we're talking about things like
the Year 7 tutor, please contact reception. Thank you.
We're talking about things like increasing the minimum wage, for example, increasing the amount of childcare facilities so that more women can go out to work and it's less costly for them. We're talking about education and training. We're talking about privatisation, etc., etc. The list is, you could probably think of 20 things if you sat down to write a list. In the mark scheme, they listed these items as potential. This is not a finite list. Education and policy. Education, reducing direct taxes, other incentives such as subsidies, reducing state benefits, encouraging new technology, improving infrastructure, reducing monopoly power, increasing competition, reducing trade union power. All of these things and more could be identified. So let's see what this candidate's written. So the first one they've identified is education and training. A more educated and trained workforce has a higher human capital because they're more skilled. Their skills make them more productive. You can see the way that they are linking the education and training into skills, into productivity, into output. The higher productivity increases the output of the economy. Now that's a tremendous answer. In this particular question, your discussion could be really a reinforcement of why it works and why it's good, or your discussion should be, on the other hand, why education and training might not be so effective at achieving economic growth. But this candidate's got 4 already, so we can stop there on that one. Next one. What about reducing benefits? If the state reduced transfer payments, as you know, the collective term for state benefits, many would not be able to afford their current lifestyle. Their falling disposable income would mean that they find it harder to afford necessities. This would act as an incentive to find a job and increase their incomes. The greater the level of employment, the greater GDP per capita, and the higher the economy's productive capacity. The rise in employment also increases tax revenue, which can be used through fiscal policy to expand the economy. This is less effective than education and training, but still increases some people's incentives. And again, you can see the L4s here in the margins. This is indicative that the candidate has discussed, and so this candidate got 8 out of 8 on this particular question. Moving on, question 2. Right, starts off very easy. Tick the 2 items which are government benefits. So answers being job seekers and the state pension. And then the next couple of questions refer to this particular data set. So this is showing the percentage of households with a certain percentage of disposable income. And you can see straight away that incomes are not spread evenly because a certain percentage of the population are very wealthy. If you look to the over 60,000, it's a very small percentage, and then you've got again a very small proportion of the population under 50, and then you've got the vast majority in and around the sort of 10 to 25 or 30,000. So let's look at the question. The question says, does figure 2 show evidence of an uneven distribution of income? So you get 1 mark for saying whether it does or does not, and then the following 3 marks are for your reinforcement as to why that's the case. So this candidate says figure 2 does show an uneven distribution of income and wealth, which is true, because the percentage of households with the same disposable income varies. There are various amounts of disposable incomes within the economy which suggest uneven distribution of income and wealth. For example, now this is good. You must refer, in a question like this, you must refer to the data and read off percentages from the chart. Don't forget to do something like that. If you've got a data set, you must make reference to the data set. So this candidate goes on. For example, 21% of households have a disposable income between 10 and 15,000, and you can see the candidate is getting a tick for this, they're getting credit for this. 2.4% have a disposable income over 60,000, tick. Although the percentage of the highest and lowest disposable incomes are similar, the vast gap in the value of their disposable incomes shows great inequalities. So again, the number of ticks on this one identifies the number of marks. So this is 1, 2, 3 ticks. So this candidate scored 3 out of 4. Should probably have mentioned something about the very significant proportion who are in this section here, the 10 to 30,000 area for the 4th mark. Right, here we go. Let's see what we've got here. Explain why households in the UK have different incomes. So there are all sorts of things that you could have written for this one. You could have talked about regional differences in incomes. Obviously people working in London tend to get a London weighting allowance on their income. You could have talked about the number of people who are actually working in a household. That would obviously make a difference. You could have talked about the types of jobs that the people are doing in those particular households. That makes a difference. You could have talked about the elasticity of supply of the particular labour. So people earning the higher wages tend to have a very wage inelastic supply. What else could... Oh, you could have talked about the relative demand and supply for the particular occupation. So deep sea divers and oil rigs, for example, highly demanded, very little supply, and that combination, if you drew it on a demand and supply diagram, would give you a very significant wage. So I'm not going to read through this one. There's so many things you could write on that one. The only thing to say about this one is this candidate's got a particularly interesting diagram here where they have drawn the Lorenz curve diagram, which shows how incomes are unevenly distributed, and this line here is what's known as the line of perfect equality, and this line, this curved line, represents how far away a country may be from that, and the government uses taxes and benefit spending, so basically the welfare system, to try and get the economy closer to this line of perfect equality. Now, of course, let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, that some people would argue that an uneven distribution of income and wealth is a good motivator, because people see other people who are more well off and they think, I want to be like that, and so it motivates them to become successful businessmen and women. So it's not necessarily always a bad thing. 2D. Lorenz curve creeps up once again. Should the UK government increase direct taxes such as income tax to redistribute incomes more evenly? Give reasons for your answer. So let's see what this candidate has written. The answer should really be discussing sort of the progressive nature of income taxes and how that helps to redistribute income for the haves to the have-nots, so the have less, and then a little discussion of the sort of disincentive effects of raising taxes, how that disincentivizes both workers from either joining the labour force, or if they're already in the labour force, there's a disincentive effect there, because they think to themselves, why should I work harder for this promotion if it's going to mean that I fall into a higher tax band and hence end up paying more tax, and actually my take-home pay is not really that much greater and I'm doing a lot more work for it. There's a sort of a trade-off there between your work time and your leisure time. And good evaluation, of course, would be the fact that the Labour government, which introduced the 45% tax rate, well, in the end that was scrapped because it was found to be having such a great disincentive effect on the very well-off, who are, let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, the very well-off are very mobile. And so if the tax rates are too high, they just say, well, we're off, and they move somewhere else. And so the 45% UK tax rate was found to be taking in such, in relative terms, little tax revenue that it was scrapped. Great evaluative comment. So I think I've covered really everything that needs to be said there. I'm not going to go through that one. Right, figure 3. Define the term inflation. A sustained rise in the price level measured over a given period of time, usually 1 year. Excellent. Next one. What's the full name of CPI? Consumer Price Index. When was it at its highest? Well, there it's at its highest, and that's 2011. Take a line down straight. 2011. The next question. The Bank of England has a 2% inflation target. How successful was it? Well, tricky question this one, ladies and gentlemen. Not many scoring 2. You must remember that the Bank of England's target for inflation is 2%, but it's a symmetrical target, i.e. it can be plus or minus 1% either side of 2. So if it's 3%, it's within target. If it's 1%, it's within target. So if we look at the diagram from here all the way to here, so it's 2003 to 2007, it's within target. From here to here, it's within target. So it's only this little section and this section here where it's actually outside of the government's target. So the majority of the time on this data set anyway, it is actually within those remits. And you just got to put that into some sort of comprehensive answer, coherent answer. Right, this question, badly done, ladies and gents. You need to look at this again. The costs of inflation, menu costs, inflationary noise, hyperinflation, etc., etc., wage price spirals, that type of thing. You need to look at this again. This was poorly done, this question. Menu costs. This is less prevalent nowadays. Menu costs relates to the fact that businesses, shopkeepers, when prices are changing all the time, so too do shopkeepers have to change their prices in their stores. Now, 20 years ago, that meant they had to go around there, every good in the shop with a little pricing gun and reprice all the goods in their store. That was very costly, both in terms of labour, time, and obviously there's equipment and material costs that go alongside of that. Nowadays that's less prevalent because, of course, a lot of things are online priced, so it's merely a case of changing something online, which is a lot less time consuming. Let's see what this candidate's written for the 3 ticks there. To allow them to continue to make a reasonable profit, they have to periodically adjust their prices. Restaurants, for example, have to update their entire menu to change their prices, which is a cost for them, and the credit's been given for that. And hyperinflation. Inflation can lead to hyperinflation if prices become too high. As prices rise, government may print money to help the public pay for the goods and services. When the money supply increases and the cost of production rise, the price level rises, money loses its value. Leads to hyperinflation. You could also have talked in there about a wage price spiral. As prices get out of control, wages are pushed up. This then subsequently leads to further rounds of price rises, which leads to further rounds of wage rises, etc., etc. And money then loses value. And lastly, 2 government policies to reduce the rate of inflation. Discuss how effective each may be. So really, most people wrote about fiscal policy. So you could be saying a tight fiscal policy, a contractionary fiscal policy, whereby the government would reduce G, government spending, increase taxation. They could do one or other of those, or a combination of each. Your job then is to explain how that would subsequently impact aggregate demand. So you'd be saying things like, well, if the government pulls money out of the economy, that will reduce the level of demand in the economy. People employed in the public sector would lose their jobs. No jobs, no income, therefore no demand. Hence, aggregate demand falls, and that helps to reduce the rate of inflation. As it's a discussion question, you would need some type of evaluative comment. So you may say something like, however, people may continue to spend at exactly the same level as previously because they may, for example, dip into their savings. They may run down their savings pot. So make sure not only that you discuss it in full, but you also provide some type of evaluative comment. And then here we have one on monetary policy. So the correct monetary policy, ladies and gents, would be to increase the base rate. Now, those of you who got this wrong, lots of you got the fiscal policy wrong because you said reduce taxes, and you got the monetary policy wrong because you said reduce the base rate. No, no, no. Monetary policy, increase the base rate. What happens? Saving is more attractive. Spending is less attractive. People on variable rate mortgages find that they have to pay more every month. If you're paying more on your mortgage, you've left to spend on those little luxuries in life. Consequently, demand falls. Consequently, inflation starts to fall as well. And again, evaluative comment required. So the obvious one for monetary policy is that interest rate policy, interest rate changes take around 18 to 24 months to feed into the real economy. So the time lag effect is a big evaluative comment on this one. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the trial exam, the mock exam feedback. The next stage of the process, I think, has to be to now start to put together some practice questions for A593, your stimulus material for June. And that's something that we can get cracking on almost immediately. So see you again, keep subscribing, and see you next time. Bye.